Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the online meeting to call for a Community Neurorehabilitation Team for the Central and North Dublin County and City and County. My name is Mags Rogers. I'm the CEO with the Neurological Alliance of Ireland. We're the umbrella group for 40 not-for-profit organisations throughout Ireland supporting people with neurological conditions and their families. I'm delighted to be joined today by both local people living with neurological conditions and by local service providers from across Central Dublin County and City. And you're going to hear directly from them why it's vital that a community neurorehabilitation team promised since 2019 is delivered for this local area. Quick few housekeeping bits. I'm delighted to welcome everyone to this afternoon's meeting, but I'd ask you to wait until all our speakers have spoken, and then please do raise your hand. And just again, if I could ask everyone maybe to stay on mute until the Q&A session, and then I'll bring people in. I'd like to welcome the public representatives who've joined us at this afternoon's meeting. Maybe if anyone is here from the offices of a TD and it's not clear, maybe from what comes up on Zoom, who you're representing, to just quickly pop into the chat which TD or Senator's office that you're representing. But great to have so much representation here today. Just to say that this meeting is recorded and will be available afterwards across all our social media channels. So just a quick few introductory points in relation to the issue that we're here to speak about this afternoon. What is a community neurorehabilitation team, and why is it so critical that a community neurorehabilitation team is available for Dublin Central and North Dublin City and County? So community neurorehabilitation teams are multidisciplinary teams providing essential therapies like physiotherapy, speech and language therapy, occupational therapy, and neuropsychology for people with living with a neurological condition, and they're provided in the community, close to people's homes. There is unfortunately a postcode lottery emerging for Dublin City and County for neurological patients in the centre and north of the county and city cannot access a community neurorehabilitation team, unlike other areas in Dublin. So community neurorehabilitation team was promised for this area in 2019 in order to provide critical therapies for adults recovering from or living with conditions like acquired brain injury, but also a wide range of other neurological conditions from Parkinson's disease, multiple sclerosis, stroke, as well as rare and genetic neurological conditions. Community neurorehabilitation teams are due to come on board later this year to serve areas which include the south and west of Dublin, the south and west of Dublin, I beg your pardon, but the central and northern areas of Dublin City and County, as I've said throughout, still have not received funding for a community neurorehabilitation team. And as I say, that was promised since as far back as 2019. The team for the North Dublin area is one of 4 teams that still need to be rolled out across the country. And there is a clear commitment in the programme for government on page 94 and to deliver the remaining neurorehabilitation teams around the country, including this team for Dublin Central and Dublin North County and City. And just what does this mean? And you'll hear shortly from, as I say, local neurological patients and service providers. Well, it means that patients being discharged from national services such as the National Trauma Centre, for example, in the Mater Hospital, and the National Neurosurgical Centre in Beaumont Hospital, along with all other hospitals throughout this region, don't have access to a team locally. And both those hospitals discharging people and also people already living with neurological conditions throughout these communities are disadvantaged compared to other areas of Dublin City and County that have a team coming on board. So at this stage, I'm going to hand over to our first speaker, Eugene, who lives in Dublin 13. And Eugene is going to speak about his own experience of living with a neurological condition and the difference that having a community neurorehabilitation team would make to himself and to patients like him living, as I say, throughout Dublin Centre and Dublin North City and County. So I'll hand over to yourself, Eugene. Is Eugene all right to speak there now, Lorna?
Sorry, Lorna, I think he's on mute.
Apologies, yeah, there we are.
Okay. Well, my name is Eugene Hancock. I had a brain injury roughly 15 years ago. I was in a car crash. But I find the services that Headway gave to me were invaluable. After the brain injury, when I was in hospital, I ended up leaving Beaumont Hospital and going out to the rehab out in Dunleary. But there's nothing on the north side of Dublin. When I come to Headway, I come into head office, which is in Monastery. That's the closest service to me. But I find what Headway do invaluable. I'll be lost only further. It was so important to me. Personally, I think if there was some type of community, Headway community on the north side of Dublin that I could access, it would be invaluable. I know there's a Headway out in Clondalkin, and the closest Headway to me is this one in Monastery. If it was on the north side of Dublin, it'd be incredible. And I think it's not just for me, other people in my situation probably worse off than me. When I first had my brain injury, I don't know how I was referred to Headway, but I found them invaluable when I started with it. And they're still very good to me. But I'm starting to feel guilty. I might take up someone else's position, you know. So it'd be fantastic if there was a Headway on the north side of the city that I could access, and other people like me.
And Eugene, you spoke very well and very powerfully just a few weeks ago. You spoke in Leinster House and you spoke about the impact that your brain injury had on you. Do you want to speak about that just briefly?
Yes, when I had the brain injury, we ended up in hospital. I was about 2 years in Beaumont and then another year out in the rehab out in Dunleary. But unfortunately, 3 years out of the family home, the marriage broke up. The wife had moved on with her life. Unfortunately, all the finances fell on top of her, whereas she was a mother first, and then she worked part-time basically. I was the main breadwinner, but when I got sick, everything fell on top of her. And unfortunately, the pressure of that led to say, the marriage was disintegrating, you know. So when I came out of hospital and I ended up in a nursing home, we lost the house, basically, you know. So that's about it. It's a huge price to pay, you know, in my opinion. But unfortunately, things happen. That's what happens, you know.
And you spoke so powerfully, Eugene, about the life-transforming experience of an acquired brain injury.
Yeah.
Really, there's so many aspects of your life had changed. And I just say that it's just so important people don't have to worry that there's a service there for them, that they don't have to worry about what supports are going to be available for them.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, the help I received from Headway was incredible, you know. They supported me really well, but unfortunately, the other side of the coin was the marriage fell apart. And that was purely under pressure. Now, maybe if the services had been there on the north side of Dublin and we could have accessed them, maybe my marriage would have been okay, you know. But it didn't. It was just pure pressure, basically, you know.
And I remember you spoke about that, how long it took you to find the services to meet your needs. I'm going to bring in Fiona Murphy now, who's the CEO with Headway. Fiona, just around that, the services that your organisation provides and where you see the need for a team for this area.
Thanks, Mags. To move on from what Eugene said there, the big thing and what Eugene experienced is what we've been hearing for years and years. You come out of the hospital, whatever hospital it is, and previously in whatever part of the country. It was a long time before Eugene found out about Headway and got referred to Headway, but also there were no other services. So the neuro rehab teams is such a step forward insofar as somebody gets out of the hospital and they're linked in. So they're linked into the multidisciplinary team that's required. So Headway, and as well, part of that will be that they get to Headway sooner. They get to the long term. We're part of this insofar as, and as Eugene has said, Eugene attends various groups. We provide peer support groups, activity groups, individual community rehabilitation, therapy, cognitive cog rehab. So all of that, some people need it very long term in the community. Other people, they dip in and out as according to what they need. But previously, what we were looking at was that people would come to us for assessment. They would have gotten no services. We were trying to refer them on to speech and language, trying to refer them on to OT, not being very successful. So the community rehab teams, the neuro rehab teams that have been launched are a great step forward. The fact that in Dublin, which has some of the main hospitals from which people are discharged, does not have that it's a major deficit for clients of ours in Dublin who are coming out of the hospitals to support them in that. So it is very, very important that, and in the other regions as well, where it has not been rolled out, where we also have some presence, it is very important that they get that, because we have been hearing for so many years people coming to us and they might have had a stroke, it might have been a traumatic brain injury. They come out to virtually no support in the community. They come to Headway and they're very, very, most people have a very good experience with Headway because it's the first time that as well that they have gotten support. But if they had that sooner, and if they had all of the other parts of that multidisciplinary team, it would make a massive difference to people.
As you say, Fiona, it's part of a pathway. So people coming out of hospital or people in the community already, they need services like physiotherapy, occupational therapy, speech and language therapy, before almost they can avail of your services to the maximum benefit, that they need access to these therapies first. And as you say, when people are missing that link in the chain, it's something that almost you can provide at a later stage. They really should have access to that team when they need it. And just to say, it's a team that provides access to those essential therapies for a period of 12 weeks. And after that, people, as you say, Fiona, people really still have longer term needs for rehabilitation, but that 12-week of intensive rehabilitation is really, really important for people. They will have needs beyond those 12 weeks, but that critical intervention at a really, really important time for people. And as you say, that's available in some parts of the country, in some parts of Dublin even, and not others. And I suppose constantly through this meeting this afternoon, you'll hear me use that term postcode lottery, because what we are seeing is the teams coming on board for the west of Dublin, for the south of Dublin later in 2025, but still no funding even for that promised team in the centre and north of Dublin city and county. So thank you so much for that, Fiona. I just want to bring in Joe and Pat at this stage, just again, their Headway clients and just around their own experiences. So if I could go to Joe first.
Yeah. Hello. So my name is Joe O'Rourke, and I had a cardiac arrest. It's just over 4 years ago at this stage, and it came out of the blue. I thought I was healthy. I thought I was fit. I did a good bit of walking. My cholesterol level wasn't very high. But one day I came home and I just went up and lay in bed, and by poor chance, my wife came up and saw that I was gone. My heart had stopped, and she did CPR straight away. And my son was there, and he went out and got the neighbours. And to kind of cut a long story short, it took about, I think it was 50 minutes for an ambulance to arrive. And I was taken to James's and ICU for 3 days. And then following that, I was in James's for about 6 weeks, and I thought I was okay. I thought there was nothing wrong with me. I wanted to get home, and James's then wouldn't discharge me, and they were trying to organise rehabilitation, but there was no vacancy. So I said, well, I just want to get home because my mental health is suffering here, you know. So eventually they agreed and they let me home. And by luck, I got a phone call from Peamount about a week later, and they had a vacancy. So I went to Peamount for 4 weeks, and that's where I heard of Headway. And that's something that several people have said that they didn't hear about Headway, you know, just it was kind of by word of mouth from some friends. So there is an issue there about publicity and Headway and advertising, and that's all expensive, you know. But I was extremely lucky because I saw some report in James's that if a cardiac arrest happens in a situation outside of the hospital, your chances of survival are only about 4%. So I consider myself to be extremely lucky, and I've made a very good recovery. So, you know, I would just like to kind of talk about people who've had brain injuries, you know, who are kind of more affected than I am, because while I'm not 100%, I'm, you know, as near as makes very little difference. But I have come into Headway here and taken part in a compassion-focused therapy group. And we have clients there, you know, who are absolutely, their lives are turned upside down. And that's something you were talking about earlier, you know, the impact of brain injury is absolutely incredible. You know, people have a loss of confidence. You just kind of feel as if you're scared. You think you're going to make mistakes. You're constantly looking for your keys, my wallet, my phone. You know, you're terrified to kind of go places because you think you're going to get maybe even lost, you know. And some people, some clients have suffer from epilepsy. They've had seizures. They can't get back to work. They can't drive their cars. They can't look after their family. They suffer from fatigue. It's absolutely incredibly important that people get support. And now, I mean, there are different types of services might be needed at different times. You know, maybe speech and language, maybe physiotherapy, occupational, but ongoing. There's this kind of as Pat calls it, a hidden phenomenon of people, you know, who have brain injuries, who look okay. We don't have white sticks. You look fine. People don't see that there's something wrong with you, and yet you kind of feel that you have no confidence. You know, it takes you a longer time to kind of understand things, and people just need to be aware of it and make allowances. You can't. Your vision can be impaired. Your memory is impaired. You know, it's just really difficult. It's actually difficult to explain it even. I keep saying that the only people who can understand the brain injury are people who actually have one. It's very difficult because otherwise you're looking at it from the outside, whereas when you have a brain injury, it's something internal in yourself, and you feel very, very vulnerable, very fragile. So it's incredibly important that services are made available. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joe. I think that's really, really, you've given a fantastic insight into what it's like. As you say, you feel yourself lucky, but just in terms of people like yourself and that critical need for the supports that you need at the right time and in the right place in your community. And I suppose just to reiterate that these are specialist teams, these community neurorehabilitation teams provide that specialist, what you're talking about, the physiotherapy, occupational therapy, neuropsychology, that people just can't get elsewhere. You spoke about your own experience, Joe, of just having that rehabilitation in Peanut Hospital, but then just hearing about Headway offhand, you know, that link needs to be made much earlier. And as Fiona said, that the Community Neurorehabilitation Team, really that team needs to slot in immediately for people and link them on to those long-term services. I'm going to bring in Joe at this stage, Joe, to hear from yourself.
You mean Pat?
Pat.
Sorry, Pat, to hear from yourself.
From area Pat work from Clonsilla, Dublin 15. I suffered a stroke in April 2021 in the middle of COVID lockdown. I'm lucky. I was only in hospital for 2 weeks, but on discharge, there were no rehab services available. My wife, who was the only one who actually supported me at the time, fought and phoned and rang and tried to get help from me, but she couldn't. I started to walk myself, to go for walks daily to get myself back on target. I used to work for the ambulance service, ironically. I've had to give the job up because of the deficit that I have since the stroke. I have problems with memory. I have problems occasionally with speech. And you forgive me, I might start to get stuck in the middle of this. Again, Joe's stolen my thunder. Everything Joe has said is exactly where I am with that. I think a North Dublin neurological team is important to help people when they've been discharged. And without any disrespect to the hospitals, the hospital, the doctor will, as soon as you can stand up and tell them your name, they put you down as being cured. Again, we are the forgotten people in society. We are the people with the hidden disabilities. I'm an advocate of the fact that we don't have wheels or wood sticks, but we have an internal problem and people can't see that. Whereas a neurological team in the community would help us to deal with that, to give us the self-confidence to move on, to help us with getting back on our feet, work-wise, etc. And with regards to Headway, I only found out about Headway by accident. And I find that even though now my situation is I'm very lucky that I'm able to walk, talk and drive, etc., I would be lost without Headway's services. I'm a member of the social group. I'm a member of the advocacy committee. And the support we get from the carers here, the staff, is phenomenal. And I don't think people realise the work that they do. They've given me confidence. I can walk into a room full of people who know what I'm talking about because we have all suffered at some level. So I think an external neurological service is vital for people on discharge, that they get immediate rehabilitation, whether it be speech and language, physiotherapy, just living, getting on with living. I mean, people don't realise when you've had a stroke. I think the best way to put it is the person I was the night before I had the stroke is dead. There's a new me, and trying to get used to being me and not harp back on what happened prior to what's happened now is difficult. And I got psychological help from the rehab in Dunleary again, but it took time to get these things. Things need to be there that when you are discharged, when you step out of the hospital bed, that you go somewhere else, that you don't have to wait months, weeks, depending on whether you're VHI or medical card, or in fact, in most cases, you're not medical card because we don't meet the criteria for such. That's my vision on the thing, and I apologise for any misconception I would be given. Sorry.
Thank you so much, Pat, and like all of you there, Eugene, yourself and Joe this morning, just you've given this afternoon, you've given a fantastic insight. As you say, as Pat said, no one knows what a brain injury is like, except maybe people that have gone through it. But I think the three of you speaking for the brain injury community have done a fantastic job this afternoon of just giving us that insight. And as I say, I'll keep harking back to this postcode lottery idea, but it really is heartrending for me. And I run a national advocacy group of people in some parts of the country describing to them what a community neurorehabilitation team is. So these teams where they are up and running, in the parts of the country where they are up and running, they literally meet people from their hospital bed. When people are discharged from hospital, they get a letter from the Community Neurorehabilitation Team to turn up to that team, and they're offered speech and language therapy, neuropsychology, physiotherapy for 12 weeks. For people already living in the community, and I'm going to bring in Kat in a minute, but just to talk about those needs for people with progressive neurological conditions, for people already living in the community with a neurological condition, when they need access to these therapies, again, they can get access to a community neurorehabilitation team. But it really is heartbreaking for me to have to explain to people, no, your part of the country hasn't been one of those regions that has got access to a community neurorehabilitation team yet. And that's where, and when it comes down to areas of Dublin, areas of our capital city and county, where in some areas there's access to a community neurorehabilitation team, and simply because you're a few miles out, that you don't have access to this vital service, it really is not, really is unfair for people, and they really can't understand it. And I suppose just before I bring Kat in, just to say that what we're asking for in the Neurological Alliance of Ireland is in the current programme for government, that the 4 remaining regions of Ireland that need a community neurorehabilitation team would be funded for that team in this year's budget. Again, to eliminate that regional inequity, where depending on where you live across the country, you do or do not have access to this vital service for people living with neurological conditions. So I'll bring in Kat, because as I say, Kat is talking about, we've heard about acquired brain injury, but Kat is going to talk about the needs of people with multiple sclerosis, which is a progressive neurological condition. And these people have a different pathway. They may not be coming out of hospital as such, but they're already living in the community with significant needs and requiring that community neurorehabilitation team. So I'll bring in yourself there, Kat.
Hi everyone, my name's Kat. I am the North Dublin and Fingal community worker at MS Ireland. I currently have about 700 to 800 people with MS in North Dublin and Fingal. And I would say one of my key parts of my role, so I provide a lot of support, both emotional and practical. But one of the things that I kind of explain to people is that my role is, I'm like a bridge. So I connect people to a lot of services, and that's really hard when the service isn't there. So there is a massive need for the community neurorehabilitation teams. Obviously, they're a multidisciplinary team, and they provide essential therapies such as the physio, the speech and language therapy, occupational therapy, neuropsychology for people living with a neurological condition in the community. And the support that they provide is absolutely crucial for the people that we support here at MS Ireland. And we know that, without this service, it really impacts the people that I support. So as Mags has said, there's definitely a postcode lottery for people with neurological conditions, both in the centre, the north of Dublin City and the north of the county. So unlike other areas of Dublin City and the county, they cannot access a community neurorehabilitation team. And this gap has a serious impact. So here at MS Ireland, we work directly with people who are affected by MS, and we provide a variety of services, including one-to-one support through our regional community worker program, information and advocacy services, access to newly diagnosed sessions and peer support groups, as well as symptom management programs such as fatigue and exercise workshops. And we also offer a national helpline. We have a respite care centre in Dublin, counselling services in various regions. And our work helps people manage the complexities of MS and helping maintain their quality of life. But a lot of my clients still struggle to access essential public therapies in the community, especially where services like the community neurorehabilitation teams are not yet available. And having that resource would be a game changer in so many lives. So the community neurorehabilitation team was actually promised in 2019, as Mags was saying, and in order to provide critical specialist therapies to people with multiple sclerosis, but also other range of conditions, including Parkinson's disease, acquired brain injury, stroke, as well as rare and genetic neurological conditions. So it's meant to come on board in 2025 to serve areas which include the south and west of Dublin, but the central and north areas of Dublin City and County have still not received the funding to establish the community neurorehabilitation team that was promised in 2019. And the team for North Dublin is one of the 4 teams that still needs to be rolled out across the country. And as Meg's just said, the government has actually committed to this in their current programme for government. And those other teams are the Midlands, the Southeast and the Northwest of Ireland. But I see it daily, the need for this resource, and like it would make tangible differences in the lives of people living with a progressive disease like MS.
Thank you so much, Kat. And I think you described it so well as a bridge. And like as Fiona said earlier, that Headway being the bridge, that people will need a lifetime of support living with these neurological conditions, but they really need that first step on the ladder of those access to those critical therapies to enable them to move on to those longer term support. So I suppose just to sum up before I invite people to make any comments and come in, if anyone wants to just raise their hand before they speak. Just to reiterate that this team for the centre and north of Dublin City and County was promised back in 2019 as part of the National Neurorehabilitation Strategy. So 9 teams were promised, and 4 still remain to be funded. So as I say, the team that we're talking about today for Centre and North Dublin City and County, and also teams for the Midlands, Northwest and Southeast. The Neurological Alliance of Ireland is calling for funding for those 4 community neurorehabilitation teams in this year's budget, including that team for the Central and North Dublin City and County. And as I say, that is committed to within the current programme for government. So at this stage, I just want to open up the meeting for it and just invite anyone to come in with any comments. I see Deputy Barry Hennigan wants to come in there. Barry, can I invite you in?
Rick, can you hear me there?
You can indeed, yeah.
Yeah, just want to thank you very much, and I apologise. I'm in between meetings at the moment, so I'm just outside another one, so I have to run off. But I heard you loud and clear. I'd like to thank everyone who shared their personal stories. As a TD for Dublin Bay North, it's my first time being elected, and I was on the phone to you recently, so I think I'm well aware of what you're looking for in the budget, and I just want to guarantee that I'll be pushing very hard from the inside. And I know there's a few other public reps here, and I hope we have a cross-party work and really get the results that you were promised in 2019. And please God, we do get them in the budget now. And I see a few other familiar people in the lobby here. So listen, my emails are always open. If anyone needs anything particularly put in as a PQ or anything raised, please get on to me. And I will be raising this as a QPL in the Dáil. So please God, we do get the response we need. And thanks very much for the invitation.
Thank you so much, Deputy Hennigan. And I know that you were in touch with us straight after our presentation recently on the 5th of March in Leinster House around this issue. So thank you so much for your support. We really appreciate it on behalf of your constituents in Dublin Bay North. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to come in there from? Anyone else want to have any comments there or just want to offer their support?
Hi there, it's Patrick here from Marie Sherlock's office. First of all, Marie just wanted to send her apologies. To make it, she just had a personal issue that come up this afternoon, but just want to assure you of Marie's support, particularly as the health spokesperson as well, and that this will be something we'll be considering for a question as well when we have oral questions to the Minister, and we look forward to working with you to make this happen. It's very important, and I really want to thank Eugene, Joe and Pat as well for, really speaking about their personal experience. It's very important that we all hear that, Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, and we're delighted to have Deputy Sherlock's support, I just say, from her role as Labour spokesperson on health as well. Thank you so much for your support.
Sorry, I have my hand up there. I was just waiting on someone to call me.
Yes, go on ahead. Sorry. I just don't know your name there. If you want to introduce yourself there.
Yeah, so my name is Councillor Janice Boylan. I'm on the meeting on behalf of Mary Lou MacDonald TD. So just firstly to send our apologies and to say that we in Sinn Féin fully support what you guys are looking for. We think that it's an absolute necessity in the community. I had a personal experience a couple of years ago with Headway. I ended up, I done the women's marathon now, and I say I done it, I walked it. for Headway because they had assisted in with a friend of mine's mother. That was my first experience of somebody that needed all of those services, and those services weren't there. So only for Headway, that was the only kind of sense of normality that she was able to engage in. Again, unfortunately, she did pass away due to other illnesses, but the time that she spent in Headway was really, really beneficial to her and her family. So I know well how these services are needed, and exactly what a team would be able to provide to a person coming directly from the hospital. Because with my friend's mum, unfortunately, by the time she got tied into the services, she had got progressively worse, and they maintained that if she had had the services, she would have been a lot more better than she eventually was. So 100% anything that we can do. I've taken notes. I'll go back to Deputy MacDonald. She will raise PQs, and anything that you need her to do, we will fully support you within the community. I represent Dublin's North Inner City, and obviously Mary Lou represents the whole of Dublin Central, but we fully support the work you do. And just thanks to Eugene, Pat and Joe for sharing your stories, and I wish you the very best. Thanks so much.
Councillor Boylan, thank you so much for that, and I really, really appreciate your support on behalf of yourself and on the party your party leader as well. And we've spoken to your health spokesperson, David Cullinan, and he's been very supportive of this throughout. His own area in the southeast is an area that hasn't been funded for a community neurorehabilitation team. So really, and as you've said, we can't have this inequity where some parts of the country have access to this vital service and others don't. So really, really appreciate your support, and on behalf of yourself and your party leader that you're representing here today as well. Thank you. Just if any of the NAI member groups that are here want to come in and make a comment on behalf of the groups that they represent as well. I'm just keeping an eye out for hands here. Just start talking if I don't see you. I have Maeve here from Muscular Dystrophy. Maeve, do you want to come in there?
Hi, Mags, and thank you to everybody and for the people who contributed their experiences. And I'd really, just on behalf of Muscular Dystrophy Ireland, I'd very much like to echo how Kat from MS Ireland described the need for such services in the community. Our members would have very similar needs, and our members are people living with muscular dystrophy and related neuromuscular conditions, which are in the main progressive. So all those health professionals, support and therapies are vital to people living well in their community. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Maeve, and it's great to get that representation on behalf of the muscular dystrophy community as well, because we're hearing from so many conditions this afternoon. We're hearing from so much from the acquired brain injury community, and they're fantastic ambassadors in Eugene, Pat and Joe, and we're also hearing from the MS community through Kat, but it's great to hear from yourself for the muscular dystrophy community as well. Just before I summarize, is there anyone else that wants to come in there just on behalf of any of the public representatives or on behalf of an NAI member group?
Hi, Max, it's Barbara from Spine Injuries Ireland here.
Hi, Barbara, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, just to reiterate what everyone has said, I suppose in Spine Injuries Ireland, we have 650 people in the Dublin area who, and I think around 370 of those are in the North Dublin area that aren't getting this service, which is so extraordinarily important. So just to reiterate what everyone else has said, it's that we're behind everyone with this.
Thank you so much, Barbara. I'm going to bring in Eamon there from FND Ireland. How are you, Eamon?
Thanks, Max. Just a quick comment, and again, thanks for everyone for the feedback there today, and particularly those that shared their lived experience. I myself live with functional neurological disorder, which is the organisation I founded, but also another neurological condition called dystonia. And I think it's just very important to highlight the importance of these community neurorehabilitation teams to those that have conditions that do not get access to acute inpatient neurorehabilitation. So for those, they have no other option but to access these teams. So many people living with functional neurological disorder, that's their only route to get that support of multidisciplinary services. So it's very important just to highlight all the different member organisations and lived experience representatives and the great work that Mags and the team at NAI are doing. These teams are long overdue, as Mags has noted, and we do hope that the government this year will have the funding in place and the budget for the teams in all the areas of the country that a team is outstanding. Thanks.
Thank you, Eamon. As you say, you're speaking from the Northwest, which is one of the areas that hasn't been funded and that we're looking for funding for a team. But as I say, just to reiterate that message that we've so many conditions represented here today, and across the country, we have over 860,000 people, 1 in 6 people in Ireland living with a neurological condition, which is a staggering figure. But when you think of the range of neurological conditions represented under the NAI banner, from MS to Parkinson's, acquired brain injury, stroke, muscular dystrophy, there's so many that I'm leaving out there, but I think the voices that you've heard this afternoon are just a snapshot of that community in the centre of Dublin, in North Dublin city and county, that really are at risk, as I say, of that postcode lottery because they don't have access to the community neurorehabilitation team that people in the south and the west of Dublin will be able to access from the middle of 2025 onwards. So we really can't have the situation where, because of where you live, because of being a few miles down the road, that you don't get access to this critical service. And you've heard this afternoon about people discharged from the household name hospitals like Beaumont Hospital, the Mater Hospital, but there isn't that first step, that basic team in the community to provide those services to them on their doorstep in North Dublin and the centre of Dublin where they need that service. Just if anyone else wants to come in there, just before I thank our speakers and sum up, just any of our elected representatives, does anyone else want to come in? I just want to give a last chance. I think I saw someone from Deputy Brabazon's office, maybe. Yeah. There we are. Deputy Brabazon, where are you?
Apologies about that. I got caught at a joint election committee meeting and it went on way over the expected time, and then my battery died, so I missed all of the presentation. So
we'll send it to you, don't worry.
So I'm looking forward to hearing your summary now, and whatever support we can give, I'll certainly be happy to push for you.
Great, thank you, Deputy Brabazon. I really appreciate it. And look, for anyone who couldn't make the meeting today, we have recorded it and we'll send you on the link as well, because it's definitely worth hearing. As I say, our lived experience speakers living with neurological conditions gave such a powerful message today. So as I say, we have recorded it and we will be showing it on our social media channels, but we'll also be sending the link to our public representatives. So I suppose just to summarise, we are looking for funding in this year's budget for a community neurorehabilitation team for Dublin Central and the north and the north of Dublin city and county. This community neurorehabilitation team provides critical therapies like speech and language therapy, occupational therapy, physiotherapy, neuropsychology to people living with neurological conditions in their communities. As I say, the team was promised as far back as 2019. It is a commitment within the current programme for government that the rollout of those teams is completed nationwide. There are 4 areas of Ireland who still don't have funding for a community neurorehabilitation team. That is in the Midlands, in the Northwest, in the Southwest, in the Southeast, and in North Dublin city and county. And in relation to North Dublin city and county, we really do have that postcode lottery, because in the west and south of the city, people will be able to access a community neurorehabilitation team later this year. But we haven't even got over the starting blocks. We don't even have the funding yet for the community neurorehabilitation team that is promised for Dublin North City and County. So we're really calling on our elected representatives from today. We will be launching our pre-budget submission in June, but from today onwards, we are highlighting and calling for their support for that pre-budget ask for funding for a community neurorehabilitation team for the centre and north of Dublin City and County as committed to within the current programme for government. I want to give a huge thank you to all of our speakers today. We heard from Eugene and from Pat and Joe, brain injury survivors, who spoke really forcefully and clearly about their experiences and about how they searched for support, came across Headway's services, but really that there shouldn't be that waiting time and that shopping around for the service that you need. You should have the information and the link to the services as soon as possible after your acquired brain injury. We heard from the CEO of Headway, Fiona Murphy, who talked about the team being that really important link in the chain to get people to Headway's services, to provide those essential therapies first before people can link in with the longer term supports that Headway provides. Fiona, I think you should be very proud this afternoon of the testimonials of your clients talking about how important Headway's services are. But just to reiterate that it is part of a pathway and people do need that first step on the ladder of being able to access that community neurorehabilitation teams before they can move on to the likes of your services. We also heard from Kat from MS Ireland, which is really good to have that voice for the MS and the progressive neurological conditions community. Again, a group living in the community with a neurological condition who critically need access to those specialist therapies provided by a community neurorehabilitation team. And every day Kat is seeing the difference that a team in the North Dublin area would make to the clients that she represents. And again, we also heard from muscular dystrophy, spinal injuries, functional neurological disorder. So I'd like to give a warm thank you to everyone who's joined us this afternoon, to our public representatives who've come on to offer their support, and just to say that we'll be following up on each and every one of them in the lead into the budget this year, reiterating and calling for their support for a community neurorehabilitation team. Thank you all.
Okay.
Thank you.